dare hear stories that will freeze your blood, where shadows watch and the unknown waits. Every sound, every step could be your last. Unknown presence, horror movie style font, misty glow, subtle flicker, shadows moving behind letters. I've always considered myself careful, maybe even paranoid. When I planned that solo hike through the Cascade Mountain Wilderness last March, I told 3 people my exact route, carried 2 GPS devices, and packed enough supplies for twice the trip duration. I thought I'd accounted for everything. I was wrong. The trailhead was empty when I arrived that Thursday morning. Not unusual for late winter, most hikers wait until the snow fully melts. But the parking area felt *2 empty. No other cars, no tire tracks in the dirt except mine. Just silence and the smell of wet pine needles. The trail marker looked normal at first. Standard green Forest Service sign pointing toward Whisper Lake, 12 miles northeast. But as I adjusted my pack and turned to start walking, I noticed something odd. Someone had carved shallow lines into the wood beneath the official text. Not words exactly, more like tally marks. 17 of them, grouped in sets of 5. I took a photo, told myself it was probably hunters keeping count of game. People carve things into signs all the time. The first 3 miles passed without incident. The trail wound through dense Douglas fir, carpeted with ferns that brushed wet against my pants. Birds called overhead. A squirrel chattered at me from a low branch. Everything felt perfectly, beautifully normal. Then I reached the fork. My map showed only one trail to Whisper Lake. But standing there, catching my breath at mile marker 4, I saw 2 paths diverging ahead. The left matched my GPS coordinates, continuing northeast as expected. The right path looked identical in width and maintenance, but it curved sharply west toward terrain my topographical map showed as roadless wilderness. The right path had a sign, not an official one. This was handmade weathered wood with burned lettering that read, "Shortcut 8 MI." An arrow pointed down the western trail. I stared at it for a full minute. The wood was old, maybe years old, but the burned letters looked fresh. Dark, deep. Someone had recently renewed them. "Stick to your plan," I muttered aloud. My voice sounded too loud in the quiet. I took the left path. Half a mile later, I found the first photograph. It was pinned to a tree with a rusted nail, about chest height, protected inside a plastic bag that had kept it mostly dry. The photo showed this exact section of trail. I recognized the bent tree in the background, the specific pattern of moss on the rocks. But in the photograph, someone stood in the center of the path, a figure in dark clothes, face turned away from the camera, absolutely still. The photo quality was poor, grainy, slightly out of focus, but I could make out enough detail to know it was recent. The ferns in the image matched the current growth. This picture had been taken within the last few weeks. I looked up and down the empty trail. Nothing, just trees and the distant sound of a creek. My hands shook slightly as I took another photo with my phone, documenting what I'd found. Probably just trail maintenance workers, I said to the trees, or another hiker marking their route. But I didn't believe it. The afternoon light was starting to thin when I noticed I was being followed. Not by footsteps, not by any sound at all. That was the problem. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no wind. Even the creek I'd been paralleling for the past hour had faded to a whisper I could barely hear. In that suffocating quiet, I became aware of something moving through the trees to my right, perhaps 50 yards off trail. I stopped walking, whatever it was stopped to. I started again, counting my steps. 1, 2, 3, 4. The movement resumed, keeping pace, staying parallel. "Hello," I called out. My voice cracked slightly. The movement stopped. I waited 30 seconds, listening so hard my ears ached. Then I heard it, a single crack of a branch, deliberate and sharp, like someone had snapped it with their hands rather than stepped on it. "I know you're there," I said, trying to sound confident rather than terrified. "If you need help." Another crack, closer this time, maybe 30 yards away. I started walking faster. Not quite running, but close. The movement in the trees matched my pace exactly, no longer trying to be subtle. I could see occasional flashes now through gaps in the foliage, something dark, human height, weaving between the trunks with unsettling fluidity. The sun was setting. I had maybe an hour of good light left. I'd planned to camp at mile 8, where my map showed a designated site near the creek. But the idea of setting up a tent, of being stationary and vulnerable, while something prowled the darkness nearby, made my stomach turn. The designated campsite appeared around a bend in the trail. A small clearing with a fire ring and a bare box for food storage. And sitting in the center of the clearing, arranged in a careful circle, were 7 backpacks. I froze at the edge of the tree line. The backpacks weren't old. They were modern, expensive brands, the kind serious hikers use. Each one sat upright, zippers closed, looking like they'd been carefully placed rather than dropped or abandoned. They formed a perfect circle around the cold fire ring, and in the center of the ring, driven into the ground, was a stick. Tied to the top of the stick was a strip of orange fabric, fluttering in the evening breeze. Orange, the same color as the trail markers. I didn't enter the clearing. Every instinct screamed at me to keep moving, to put distance between myself and whatever had created this display. But I needed to check those packs. Someone might be hurt, lost, waiting for help. I approached slowly, my hand on the bear spray clipped to my belt. The first backpack I opened belonged to someone named Jennifer. I found her ID in the front pocket, Jennifer Hobbs, 28, from Portland. The pack still contained food, a water filter, a sleeping bag. Everything a hiker would need. Everything except Jennifer. The second pack belonged to Michael Torres, 34, fully stocked. The third belonged to someone who'd packed children's snacks and a stuffed rabbit. Sarah Chen, 26. The rabbit's black button eyes stared at me as I carefully rezipped the pack. 7 backpacks, 7 people, all their supplies left behind. No, I whispered. No, no, no. A sound behind me, footsteps. Finally, actual footsteps crunching on gravel. I spun around. A man stood at the edge of the clearing. He wore hiking clothes, carried no pack, and his hands hung loose at his sides. He was maybe 40, average height, with several days of beard growth and eyes that caught the dying light strangely. "You shouldn't be here," he said. His voice was flat, conversational, like he was commenting on the weather. "I'm just passing through," I managed, "heading to Whisper Lake." "No, you're not." He tilted his head slightly. "The lake dried up 6 years ago. There's nothing up there but mud." My GPS device felt heavy in my pocket. According to every map I'd studied, Whisper Lake was a permanent water body, fed by mountain runoff year-round. "These packs," I gestured without looking away from him. "Do you know? They're supposed to be here. You're not." He took a step forward. "Did you take the shortcut?" "No, I stayed on the main trail." Something flickered across his face. Disappointment, maybe, or confusion. "Then how did you get here?" he asked. I didn't understand the question. I walked. Same trail I've been on for 8 miles. He shook his head slowly. "That's not possible. Not if you didn't take the shortcut." His eyes moved past me, scanning the tree line. "Unless you were invited." "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just hiking to the lake that doesn't exist." His smile was wrong, too wide. "You're lost, friend. We're all lost out here." He turned and walked back into the forest. Not hurrying, not looking back. Just walking into the darkening trees like he belonged there more than I did. I should have run. Should have grabbed my pack and sprinted back down the trail toward the parking lot. 8 miles be damned. Instead, I pulled out my GPS. According to the device, I was standing exactly where I should be, mile 8 on the trail to Whisper Lake. But when I zoomed out on the map, I saw something that made my blood turn cold. The trail I'd been following for the past hour, the path I'd walked on solid ground, showed up on my GPS as empty space. According to the satellite data, I should have been hiking through dense, trailless forest. The actual marked trail was half a mile south of my position. I'd been walking on a path that didn't officially exist, and I couldn't remember when I'd diverged from the real trail. Darkness was falling fast now. I had maybe 15 minutes before I'd need my headlamp. The 7 backpacks sat in their circle, accusing me with their emptiness. The man had vanished into the trees, and somewhere in the growing shadows, I heard a sound that I'd heard before. Branches snapping, multiple branches, in a rhythm that almost sounded like counting. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 17 snaps total. Just like the marks carved into the trailhead sign. I grabbed my pack and ran. The darkness swallowed my headlamp beam after about 30 feet. I ran anyway, crashing through undergrowth, no longer caring about staying on any trail. Behind me, the snapping continued, steady and deliberate, following at a distance that never quite closed. I ran until my lungs burned and my legs threatened to give out. The snapping had stopped, or maybe I just couldn't hear it anymore over my own crashing footsteps and ragged breathing. When I finally stumbled to a halt, bent over with my hands on my knees, I realized I had no idea where I was. My headlamp cut a weak tunnel through absolute darkness. Trees pressed in from all sides, their branches interlocking overhead to block out even starlight. I fumbled for my GPS with shaking hands. No signal, not weak signal or searching. The screen showed my position as a gray void, like I'd stepped off the edge of the mapped world. Okay, I whispered. Okay, think. The smart thing would be to stay put until morning. Set up my tent, start a fire, wait for daylight when I could get my bearings. But the thought of being stationary, of sitting in one place while something circled in the darkness, made my skin crawl. I heard water. Somewhere ahead, a creek was running. Follow water downstream, and you eventually hit civilization. Basic wilderness survival. I started walking, keeping the sound of water to my left, trying to move quietly. Every 20 steps, I'd stop and listen. Just my breathing and the creek and the wind in the trees. Normal sounds, safe sounds. Then I'd hear the footsteps. They never came closer than 30 or 40 feet. Multiple sets, moving through the underbrush with purpose, but without hurry. Sometimes to my right, sometimes behind me. Once, impossibly, they seemed to come from directly ahead before falling silent. I wasn't being chased. I was being herded. The realization hit me as I emerged into a small clearing. The footsteps had been guiding me here, to this specific spot. The forest opened up into a circular space about 30 feet across, carpeted with dead grass that crunched under my boots. And in the center stood a structure. It was a shelter of some kind, but wrong. The frame was made from stripped branches lashed together with what looked like climbing rope, orange rope, the same color as those trail markers. The walls were layers of bark and moss, carefully woven. The entrance was a low arch, maybe 4 feet tall, covered with a hanging piece of fabric. Blue fabric, the color of a tent. My headlamp caught something carved into a tree at the clearing's edge. Those tally marks again, but hundreds of them this time, covering the trunk from ground level to above my head. Groups of 5 scratched deep into the bark. I started counting, then stopped. I didn't want to know the number. "Hello," I called out, My voice sounded small. Is anyone there? The fabric covering the entrance moved. Not from wind. There was no wind. It moved aside slowly, deliberately, and a hand emerged. Pale fingers gripping the edge of the blue tent material. Then an arm. Then a face. It was a woman, maybe 50, with gray hair tangled around her face and eyes that didn't blink nearly enough. She wore hiking clothes that had once been expensive, but were now filthy and torn. On her chest, a name tag was still pinned to her jacket. Jennifer Hobbs, emergency contact. Mark Hobbs, 500-3550, 50147. Jennifer, the name from the first backpack. You're alive, I said stupidly. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she smiled, and it was the saddest thing I'd ever seen. Am I? She asked. I can't tell anymore. Your backpack, it's back at the campsite. I saw it. We need to get you out of here. You need help. He doesn't let us leave. She spoke flatly, like she was reciting a fact. We can walk anywhere we want, but we can't leave. The trails always loop back. The forest always brings us here. That's not possible. I have GPS. I have maps. So did we. She gestured behind her, into the shelter. All 7 of us. We all had plans and equipment and people waiting for us. We all tried to leave. My headlamp flickered. The battery was dying. How long have you been here? I asked. Jennifer looked down at her hands. I came in October for a 3-day hike, but the days are wrong here. Sometimes the sun comes up twice. Sometimes it doesn't come up at all. Michael thinks it's been 4 months. Sarah thinks it's been years. The man I saw at the campsite, who is he? Her eyes snapped up to meet mine. You saw the warden. What did he say to you? That I shouldn't be here. That I was lost. He asked if I took the shortcut. She grabbed my arm suddenly, her fingers digging in hard enough to hurt. Did you take the shortcut? No, I stayed on the main trail. Then there's still a chance. She released me, stepping back. The people who take the shortcut never speak again. They just walk. He doesn't need to keep them here because they're already gone. She tapped her forehead. Empty. Behind her, I could see other shapes moving in the shelter. The other hikers, I realized, watching us from the darkness. You need to leave, Jennifer said, before midnight. That's when he counts. Counts what? Us. He counts us at midnight every night. 7 marks for 7 people. If you're still here when he counts. She trailed off, looking past me into the trees. You'll become part of the trail, like we did. My headlamp flickered again, dimmed and died. The darkness was complete, suffocating. I fumbled for my backup flashlight, hands trembling so badly I almost dropped it. When the light finally came on, Jennifer was gone. The shelter stood empty, its entrance hanging open. But I could hear voices now, coming from all around the clearing. Whispers, dozens of them, maybe hundreds. Turn back. Wrong trail. He's counting. Too late, too late, too late. I ran again, crashed through the trees with my flashlight beam jerking wildly, illuminating snapshots of forest that all looked identical. I ran until I hit a trail, an actual marked trail with a wooden sign that read Whisper, Lake 4 MI, 4 miles. I'd somehow ended up 4 miles from where I'd been. That was impossible. I'd run for maybe 10 minutes, but I was on a trail, a real trail. I could see orange markers on the trees ahead. I started walking fast, almost jogging, following the markers. My watch showed 11:47 p.m., 13 minutes until midnight. 13 minutes to put distance between myself and that clearing, and whatever Jennifer had meant by counting. The trail wound through dense undergrowth, climbing slightly. My legs ached. My water was running low. But I kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant acknowledging that nothing about the last 6 hours made any rational sense. At 11:55, I found another photograph. Same tree, same plastic bag, same chest height placement. But this photo showed me, standing exactly where I was now, flashlight in hand, staring at the camera with an expression of absolute terror. In the background, barely visible in the darkness, stood 7 figures, watching. The timestamp in the corner read 3:14:26, 11:55 p.m. Today's date, 5 minutes ago. But no one had taken my picture. I'd been alone on the trail. A sound behind me made me spin around. Footsteps, multiple sets, coming fast. I saw them through the trees. 7 figures, moving in single file, each one wearing a backpack. They walked with their heads down, arms swinging at their sides, moving with mechanical precision. As they passed through my flashlight beam, I caught glimpses of faces. Jennifer, Michael, Sarah, 4 others I didn't recognize. They walked past me like I wasn't there. Didn't look, didn't slow. Just marched down the trail in perfect rhythm, heading back the way I'd come. Back toward the clearing. The last figure stopped, turned to face me. It was the man from the campsite, the warden. He smiled that too wide smile again. 11:58, he said, checking a watch that wasn't on his wrist. You might make it, but probably not. Make what? Where does this trail go? Where it always goes. Where it always went. You just couldn't see it before. He leaned closer, and I could smell earth and rot and something else. Something chemical. The forest has rules. We all follow the rules. Even you. I'm leaving right now. I'm walking back to my car and there is no car. He said it gently, almost kindly. There never was. You've been here before. You just don't remember yet. He reached into his pocket and pulled out something small. He held it up to my flashlight. It was a key ring. On it was a single car key and a small photo keychain. The photo showed me, smiling, standing at a trailhead sign with my backpack, giving a thumbs up to the camera. Behind me in the photo, clearly visible, were 3 other cars in the parking lot, but I'd arrived to an empty parking area. I was certain of it. "Check your pocket," the warden said. I didn't want to, but my hand moved on its own, reaching into my jacket pocket. My fingers closed around metal. I pulled out an identical key ring. Same key, same photo keychain, 2 sets of identical keys. That was impossible. "Midnight," the warden whispered. Somewhere in the distance, I heard counting. Slow, deliberate snapping of branches. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, pause. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. "Run," he said. Then he turned and followed the other figures into the darkness. I ran. The trail seemed to stretch endlessly ahead, the orange markers appearing just often enough to keep me moving, but never revealing what lay beyond the next bend. My flashlight was dying now, the beam fading to brown. The counting continued behind me, getting closer. 17 snaps, then silence. Then 17 more, each set closer than the last. I burst out of the tree line into a parking area. Empty. My car sat alone under a broken light, exactly where I'd left it. I fumbled with my keys. Both sets were somehow in my hand now, and unlocked the door. The inside of the car was exactly as I'd left it. Coffee cup in the holder, sunglasses on the dash, everything normal, except for the note on the steering wheel, written in my own handwriting. "Don't take the shortcut. Turn back at the fork. Leave before midnight. Please remember this time." Below that, in different ink, someone else had written, "Attempt 17. I looked at the dashboard clock. 12:00 a.m. The counting had stopped. In my rearview mirror, I could see the trailhead sign, and standing beneath it, barely visible in the darkness, were 8 figures now. 7 wearing backpacks. 1 holding a camera. As I watched, the one with the camera raised it and took a picture. The flash illuminated their face for just a moment. It was me. My hands are shaking as I write this. I'm in a motel room 300 miles from that trailhead. I drove all night, didn't stop until I crossed state lines. The police wouldn't listen when I tried to report the missing hikers, said Jennifer Hobbs, and the others were found safe months ago. That I must be confused. But I have the key ring, both of them, proof that something impossible happened. And this morning, I found something new in my backpack. A map I don't remember packing. It shows the trail system around Whisper, like in perfect detail. There are 18 tally marks carved into the bottom corner. My phone just buzzed. A calendar reminder I don't remember setting. Annual Whisper Lake Hike. Don't forget. The date is next March, 1 year from now. And I know asterisk, that when the time comes, I'll get in my car and drive back to that trailhead. I'll tell 3 people my route. I'll pack carefully. I'll be prepared, because that's what the forest requires. That's what I've always done. The counting has started again. From somewhere in the motel parking lot, 17 snaps, slow and deliberate. I thought I got away. But maybe Jennifer was right. Maybe the trails always loop back. Maybe some of us are already part of the forest, and we just don't remember yet. If you're reading this and planning a hike anywhere near Whisper Lake, don't. And if you see a sign offering a shortcut, keep walking. Please keep walking.